I have the best fans. No, not that kind of fan. I mean, you guys are great, but I'm talking about these fans. Everyone seems to be making them now. But how did we get here? Well, you see, it all started when Mumbo Jumbo built this thing on Hermitcraft. Hundreds of thousands of people saw that video, and one of those viewers was a guy called Jake Kelton, and seeing this industrial-looking fan gave him an idea. So he took Mumbo's fan, and with a little bit of redstone, he made it spin. Then the internet did what it does best, and they got Mumbo to see his video. Then he went crazy with it, and now it's taken over the entire redstone community. Now, that was a few months ago, so you might be thinking I'm a bit late to this whole craze. But there's a very good reason for that, as you will see later in the video, when Mumbo and Jake Kelton see the fruits of my labor. But before all that, we need to go all the way back to the beginning. This is Jake Kelton's original design, and while it was groundbreaking, let's just say it wasn't without its flaws. In Jake Kelton's own words, that's what happens when a builder tries to redstone. Now, before you start posting angry comments that I'm trashing his design, he gave me permission. So yeah, but all jokes aside, there was in fact a big limitation with his fan. Because of the way he made it, you can't easily make different sized fans with it. The redstone was made specifically to be a 9x9 fan. No more, no less. So say I want to make it 11x11, 13x13, or something even bigger than that. Then we need a completely new design for each and every one. That is the problem with non-expandable redstone. So what about a design that was made to be expandable? Like this one. This was made by my friend and fellow YouTuber Jazzy Red, cause he wanted to solve the exact problem I just talked about. So naturally, his fan works very differently from Jake Kelton's. The most glaring difference is all these long chains of observers. Now, doing it this way makes it very easy to expand. Want to make it bigger? Literally, just add more observers. But this is where we run into the second problem. At this size, the fan looks pretty normal. But now, let's make it bigger. Yeah. If you make it too big, it doesn't look like a fan anymore. It just turns into a spiral. It literally spirals out of control. And if we freeze the game, we can start to see why. All those observers add a tiny bit of delay. Now, when the fan is small, this isn't a problem. It actually looks pretty good with this motion blur effect. But as the fans get bigger, those chains of observers get longer, and all those delays start adding up, until the fan blade does a half lap around itself. Now, Jazzy Red did find a way to reduce the spiraling a bit, but that didn't fully solve the problem, and it caused problems of its own. So technically, this design is expandable, but with a big asterisk. So that's when I decided to take up the challenge myself. Just like Jazzy Red, I wanted a design that could be any size I want. But for that to happen, we need to get rid of this motion blur. The only way the fan's going to be truly expandable is if the blades are straight. That means no observer chains. But before I start building anything, I figured it'll be a good idea to decide how we want the fans to look. So I'm not just aimlessly placing redstone. And I figured it would also be a good idea for you to subscribe, because 89% of you aren't. Now, I don't have any animation software, so it's time to break out the good old reliable MS Paint. Pixel art is really small though, and Paint doesn't let me zoom in enough. So I'm gonna have to use the Windows magnifier to actually see what I'm doing. Now, I'm not a pixel artist or anything, but I think that looks pretty good. I mean, it's expandable, it just follows the same pattern over and over, and it's never going to make a spiral because it's all straight lines. So this is exactly what we're looking for. Okay, that was the easy part. Now I've got to somehow do that with redstone. So like I said earlier, the most important thing is for these outer layers to be powered at the same time as the inner layers. So that means we've got to power lots of observers at the same time. Now the easiest way of doing this is redstone dust. But when there's lots of dust blinking on and off, it can be quite laggy, which is a problem if we maybe want to build a room full of fans. These things are going to be running non-stop after all. If you think about it, they're basically just lag machines that look nice. So so it's best that we minimize the amount of lag they cause. So instead of redstone dust, there's 3 other things we can use, and they're things that you probably wouldn't expect, because 2 of them aren't even redstone components. We can use rails, cobblestone walls, and bubble columns. Rails are good for horizontal and diagonal redstone, cobblestone walls can trigger observers going downwards, and bubble columns do the same thing going upwards. These are all way more lag friendly than redstone dust, but they all share the same problem: size. If you think about it, this thing is basically a computer screen with 1x1 pixels. Most Minecraft computers use 2x2 pixels or bigger, because it's just much easier to fit everything in the back. We don't have that luxury, so everything needs to be packed very closely together, which is easy to do when you're just spamming a ton of observers, but we can't do that, and these things just won't fit into the tight spaces we need. Rails need support blocks underneath them, which takes up extra space, and there needs to be rails where those blocks are, and you can't put rails on top of rails, and cobblestone walls need blocks around them or they won't be the right shape, which will stop it from working, and bubble columns need blocks around them to contain the water. Nothing seems to work here. But that's when I had an idea. All the problems I just mentioned would go away if I simply rotated everything. It solves the size problem, because now that everything's horizontal, we don't need these bulky cobblestone walls and bubble columns anymore. Everything can be done with rails. They don't need to be on top of each other anymore, they can just be next to each other. So with that, making a control circuit for the fan actually becomes pretty easy. We can just lay down some rails like this, and then use observers to draw out the shape of the fan. And doing it this way, we can make it more or less as big as we want. So I did exactly that. But purple, you may ask. The fan's supposed to be vertical in the wall, but your control circuit is laying flat on the floor. How does that work exactly? You're not making a floor fan now, are you? Well, no, bear with me here. All we gotta do to get this to the wall is slap one of these bad boys on top. It simply takes everything from this flat floor of observers and rotates it 90 degrees. So now we can stick some fan blades on the front and oh god, it looks horrible. Okay, so the problem here is that our extra thick 90-degree redstone rotator thing puts everything out of sync. The redstone signals coming from this side arrive way later than the ones from this side, because it takes way more observers to get the signal from here to here. So unfortunately, now we've got to add a ton of repeaters to put everything back in order. But on the bright side, I guess it doesn't look like a train wreck anymore. Now this was my first attempt, and I sort of just winged it. I didn't actually do a perfect copy of the animation, so the fan blades are still a bit curved, and in some places it just doesn't look right at all. But that doesn't really matter, because now I know that this idea works. So I started over, and this time I closely followed the animation. I also put the control circuit on top this time, because it made fixing mistakes so much easier. I don't know why I ever decided to put it on the bottom. If I want to get in there and change something, I've got to destroy everything. Even in spectator mode, I can't see what I'm doing. And so now we have this, a perfect one-to-one creation of a thing I drew up in MS Paint. So next I wanted to see just how big I could make this thing, because that'll make it way easier to make all the other sizes later on. The only thing limiting the size is how far redstone travels through rails. It only reaches 9 blocks. So it was just a matter of adding more layers until it was too big for the rails. And this was the limit. 39 by 39. This thing is bloody colossal. You can't really see what it's doing up close. There's me for comparison. I don't think anyone would actually build it this big in survival, but if you really want to, now you can. But some people might want to build more than just one fan, so what about 2? Yeah. Our game is slowing down from lag quite a bit. You can't hear it right now, but these fans are literally making my PC fan spin up in real life. This thing is so chunky that it's completely undone any savings we made by not using redstone dust. Like, this thing only uses lag-efficient redstone components. It's just there's so bloody many of them that it's laggy anyway. It's fine if you build smaller fans, you can run several of them and not lag, but that's kind of besides the point. I mean, the whole reason we avoided dust in the first place was to not make a bunch of glorified lag machines. My point being, we could run even more of these without lagging if we could just cut out this bloody gargantuan observer cube thing. The less stuff that goes on between the clock and the front, the better. So even though this design technically works, I'm not happy with it. It was my first idea, and I definitely took a very naive and brute force approach to it. After all, your first ideas are rarely the best ones, so it's back to the drawing board. And after a bit more messing around, I figured out a way that I could maybe make this thing vertical again. But before I could get too far down this rabbit hole, one day I was in a voice chat showing off my prototypes to a bunch of technical Minecrafters, and one person in the voice chat was a guy named Sava, and he had some ideas. First off, he suggested using redstone dust to power large segments of observers, but as we've already established, I didn't want to do that. But then, his next suggestion changed everything. You know how earlier I mentioned that you can use cobblestone walls to send redstone signals downwards? Well, you can just draw out the shape of the fan blade with cobblestone walls, slap some observers on the front, put some trapdoors at the top, and boom, you've got yourself a fan blade. Now, this was one of those moments that had me thinking, why didn't I think of that? Not only are cobblestone walls extremely lag-friendly, but they have infinite distance. You can get a redstone signal from the top of a Minecraft world all the way down to bedrock instantly. So if we weren't still limited by rails, then technically we could make a fan blade as tall as a Minecraft world if we really wanted to. Cobblestone walls were the obvious answer. Thank you, Sava. So I slapped together a quick prototype and it worked pretty nicely. Unfortunately, now the maximum size was just a measly 35 by 35.
Get a load of this guy. His fan is only 35 by 35.
Yeah, what a loser.
But more importantly, it was way less laggy. But there was still room for improvement. You see, I wanted to just have a single giant wall of cobblestone walls, but I couldn't do that. Cobblestone walls affect every wall underneath them, so the top fan blades would interfere with the bottom ones. So just like we saw with my last attempt, that would completely mess up the fan. So to get around this, I had to stagger the fan blades by several blocks. So now I had independent control of each fan blade, which is what I wanted, but there was a problem. Half the fan blades were now quite far away from where I needed them to be, so I had to use extra redstone to get across this gap, and a second wall of observers at the front, which more than doubled the number of observers we needed. And I really hated that. I didn't want to have to use all these extra observers just to correct a small timing problem. It was almost perfect. Yeah, it did work, but I'm just too much of a perfectionist for my own good. All those extra observers were really bugging me, and I just needed to get rid of them, or else I wouldn't be happy with this design. So I messed around even more, and eventually, I found it. The perfect solution. The one block that would make all my problems disappear, solve world hunger, and bring about world peace. Okay, maybe it doesn't do those last two things, but whatever. I'm delirious from working on this thing for so long. Anyway, that block was iron bars. Okay, but what's so special about them? Well, they behave in a similar way to walls, but there's one important difference. They don't get affected by walls above them. I showed this discovery to Sava, and we realized this was basically the holy grail. It means that we can get rid of the stagger and just put a bunch of iron bars in between each fan blade. They act as dividers, blocking any of the walls above from interfering with the walls below. Now we can finally have one nice flat wall of observers. So I slapped together yet another prototype, and finally, simple redstone, minimal lag, and no extra bloat. So that was it, right? I'd done it. Well, no. For some reason, I still wasn't satisfied, and I couldn't quite put my finger on why. All I knew was that something was missing. That was until I had a chat with the man who started all this in the first place. That was it. That was exactly what was missing. Two-bladed fans look really good when they're small, but when you make them bigger, it looks very disproportionate. Fan blades in real life just aren't that thick. So I went straight to work, and with just a little bit of modifying, I now had a 4-blade fan. Okay, that actually looks seriously cool. Like, God, look at that. It doesn't look real. This is one of those redstone builds that has me not believing that I made this. Then after I'd finished nerding out, I realized that somewhere along the way, I'd somehow flipped the fan around and then animated it in reverse. And I don't know if you can see it, but to me, it kind of looks like the fan is spinning the wrong way. And like I said, I'm too much of a perfectionist for my own good. This might be a small thing, but it irritated me enough to bother fixing it. So once I'd finished having my OCD meltdown, I thought that surely I was done. The fan looks great, and I literally don't see anything else for me to do. The redstone's about as clean as it's gonna get. But spoiler alert, it still wasn't done. There was one thing I hadn't taken into account, because I was building this in creative mode the whole time. If I leave the area and then come back, then sometimes the fan can get a bit messed up. And the only way to put it back to normal is to turn it off and on again, which is pretty inconvenient. You don't want to have to turn these things off and on again every single time you leave your base, because otherwise that's not a decoration, that's a chore. So ideally, we want something that can detect when we leave and enter the area and restart the fan for us. Here's one I made earlier. The way it works is kind of janky, but that's the only important thing, that it works. So if you leave the area and then come back, it's going to shut off the fan as you saw there, although it actually didn't break that time. This armor stand is wearing Frostwalker boots. This ice freezes, this boat pulls back onto this pressure plate, and then when the ice melts again, this boat gets pushed off the pressure plate, which turns the whole thing back on. So yes, I can now say that I have tried turning it off and on again. Then I could finally do what I originally set out to do. And because I just can't stop adding fuel to the fire, of course, I still wasn't done, because there was one more idea I just had to try. But this time, I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll find out, along with Mumbo and Jake Kelton.
This is looking pretty fancy. This is ridiculous. Wait, hang on. How far does this go? Oh,
Beautiful.
the 4 blades for the bigger ones makes a big difference. That's pretty impressive. That is pretty impressive. It's so weird though, isn't it? This has technically been possible the entire time all of us have been making redstone videos, and I don't really fully understand why trapdoors have not been utilized in this way ever. Why do we not just use trapdoors? Like, it's a pretty good way of doing it.
I mean, the whole theme of this video is why didn't I think of this earlier? So, you know.
Yeah, I think that's been everyone's confusion. Like, why did nobody think to do this? Jake, how did you think to do this?
Most people go redstone equals lag, so I
Right.
only will use redstone when necessary. And I don't actually care about farming resources because I play in creative. So
Yeah.
I'm just going to use redstone lag to make my world pretty.
And I think that's the thing, right? You're like a builder turned redstoner, right? And builders
Yes.
use trapdoors everywhere. So it makes a lot of sense that when you moved over into redstone, you're like, oh, I could just use trapdoors for this. Whereas redstone people, we don't really think in trapdoors unless there's like a specific trapdoor thing.
This is what happens when you send a redstoner to solve a builder's problem, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Very unsurprising that none of us thought of it. We probably would have done stuff with like redstone lamps. Oh, it's so cool. Well, this is wild.
Well, that's not the end of it.
Oh my god.
Oh boy.
Okay.
But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more.
Have you animated Bad Apple? You did it.
Okay.
Here we go.
Oh, that is so funny that I just said we would probably do it using redstone lamps. Have you done it using redstone lamps?
No, these look the same. However,
Have you doubled the frames? You did! Oh
Hi.
my goodness.
High-speed fans.
Wow.
This honestly feels like this could be like a concert. You can imagine like a stage with a couple of these around the sides, and you've got like a Minecraft rave. Wow. It's loud.
it is loud. The entire time I was building these things, I had my game sound muted.
Yeah, that's understandable.
Even at 1% volume, it was annoying. Like I might be in a
Yeah.
call while working on these, and I could
Yep.
not hear people.
Okay. I'm impressed. I am impressed. That is pretty impressive.
Those smear frames are just something else. There's such a smoothness to it.
When I first finished this, I was like, huh? This is vanilla Minecraft. Gotta get the money shot.
Okay, I'm excited for this. Oh, that was a money shot for sure. That was really cool. Very, very fancy. Very, very nice.
Get it? Fancy.
Yes! I got a fresh one in! Accidentally as well.
It was all on purpose. It was all on purpose, you know. We found another fan.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think we've kind of exhausted our supplier.
Well, exhaust fan.
Oh, no.
Have we exhausted them?
I think we can just end the video on that, you know?
Yeah.